Today, a diamond engagement ring feels almost inseparable from the idea of marriage. A small box opens, light catches a polished stone, and everyone immediately understands the message. Commitment, partnership, a promise of a future together. Yet, if we traveled far enough back through history, that familiar scene would disappear. The diamond would vanish first, then the jewelry store, then modern gemstone cutting, then the idea that every serious proposal should include an engagement ring at all. For thousands of years, people married, formed families, combined property, created political alliances, and pledged themselves to one another without anything resembling the modern diamond ring. So what did they use instead? How did a promise become visible before a glittering stone became the symbol? The answer leads through ancient contracts, iron bands, gold rings, clasped hands, secret inscriptions, royal marriages, dangerous minds, changing fashions, and one of the most successful advertising transformations in modern history. The deeper story is not really about diamonds. It is about a question human beings have been asking for centuries. How do you turn something invisible, such as trust, loyalty, duty, or love, into something the world can see? To understand the history, we first have to stop imagining marriage as a purely private romantic decision. In many societies of the past, marriage was deeply public. It involved families, property, inheritance, religion, status, labor, politics, and future children. A marriage could unite estates. It could end a feud. It could strengthen a business relationship. Among the powerful, it could even reshape borders or determine who might inherit a throne. Affection could certainly exist, but marriage was often larger than affection alone. That meant the proof of a union did not always need to sit on a finger. The proof could be the presence of witnesses. It could be a public ceremony. It could be a contract, an exchange of gifts, a transfer of property, a blessing, or the simple fact that two families and an entire community now recognize the couple as joined. Imagine a marriage arrangement in a pre-modern town. There is no photographer waiting. No one posts an engagement announcement online. Instead, relatives gather. Terms are discussed. Gifts may be exchanged. Promises are spoken in front of people whose memories matter. The relationship becomes real because the community acknowledges it. In such a world, visibility comes from public recognition rather than private jewelry. This is one reason it is misleading to look backward and ask why ancient people did not propose with diamonds. The modern proposal is only one cultural form. Earlier societies often had very different ideas about what made a marriage legitimate, honorable, or binding. Still, humans have always been drawn to objects that can carry meaning. Words disappear the moment they are spoken. Objects remain. A gift can be held. A token can be shown. A symbol can survive long after the people who first exchanged it are gone. Rings became especially powerful because they are small, durable, portable, and constantly worn on the body. Long before a ring came to mean engagement in the modern sense, rings already communicated identity, authority, wealth, devotion, protection, and status. The circle itself invited symbolism. It has no obvious beginning and no visible end. For later generations, that made it an easy image of continuity. Ancient Egyptians produced rings in many forms, using materials such as gold, stone, and faience. Some carried names, some acted as seals, some had religious or protective meaning. We should not imagine every ancient Egyptian ring as a wedding band because that would force a modern interpretation onto objects that served many purposes. But rings already possessed one quality that would make them ideal for marriage customs in later cultures. They could say something important about a person without requiring that person to speak. Picture a craftsman thousands of years ago shaping a ring by hand. There are no electric polishing wheels, no computer models, no laser welders, no precision casting machines. Metal is heated over charcoal. It is hammered, cut, bent, smoothed, engraved, and fitted using tools that would look primitive beside a modern jeweler's bench. Yet the finished piece can be astonishingly elegant. It can carry a name, a symbol, or a sign of office. It can be buried in a tomb, passed through a family, given as a reward, or worn as a mark of rank. The ring is already more than decoration. It is a message. By the time we reach the Roman world, the connection between rings and betrothal becomes much clearer. Roman marriage customs changed over centuries and varied across class and region, but rings could serve as tokens connected with a promise of marriage. Some Roman betrothal rings were made from iron. To a modern person, trained to expect gold, platinum, and diamonds, the idea of an iron engagement ring may sound almost disappointingly plain, but that reaction reveals how much our own expectations have been shaped by luxury marketing. The importance of a Roman ring was not necessarily in its sparkle, it was in what the object represented. Iron had practical and symbolic qualities. It was strong. It was durable. A simple iron hoop could serve as a visible sign that an agreement existed. Wealthier people could use gold, and over time, precious metals became increasingly associated with status. But the essential idea was already powerful. A promise could be worn. Instead of relying only on spoken words or family memory, the person carried a physical token every day. Roman rings remind us that marriage was closely tied to law, property, household organization, and social structure. It is tempting to describe every ancient ring as a romantic declaration, but that would be too simple. A betrothal could involve financial arrangements and family obligations. The ring, therefore, existed in a world where love, contract, duty, and status could overlap. What looks to us like a romantic object might also have functioned as evidence that an agreement had been made. Some rings used imagery of clasped hands. The image is immediately understandable even now. Two hands join, two parties meet, agreement is made, trust is offered. This motif later became strongly associated with betrothal and marriage. It is sometimes known as the fede design, from a term connected with faith or fidelity. The beauty of the symbol is its simplicity. A ring with joined hands does not need a large gemstone to communicate partnership. The hands themselves tell the story. Now imagine such a ring being given. There is no dazzling stone commanding attention from across a room. Instead, the meaning lies in the gesture. Two hands carved into a small band mirror the two people entering an agreement. The ring is a miniature contract transformed into jewelry. In a world where many people could not read, an image like this carried tremendous power. You did not need a written explanation. You understood what joined hands meant. Another tradition that became associated with marriage was the use of the fourth finger, the finger modern Western culture often calls the ring finger. Over time, writers and traditions repeated the idea that this finger had a special connection to the heart. Later generations called the imagined pathway the vena amoris, the vein of love. Anatomically, there is no unique vein running straight from that finger to the heart. The belief is symbolic, not scientific. Yet symbols do not survive because they pass anatomy examinations. They survive because they are emotionally satisfying. The idea is almost perfectly designed for romance. A ring is circular, suggesting continuity. It is placed on a finger supposedly connected to the heart. The object becomes not merely a public sign, but a physical bridge between promise and emotion. Once people begin telling that story, accuracy becomes less important than meaning. Even today, many wedding traditions continue because they feel right, not because anyone could prove that the original explanation is medically or historically exact. During the medieval period, rings became increasingly embedded in Christian marriage customs in Europe, although practices differed widely by time and location. What matters for our story is what was still missing. Diamonds were not the normal requirement. Most couples who used rings did not need a brilliant white stone to make the marriage serious. They used plain bands, gold rings, engraved designs, symbolic images, and sometimes colored gemstones. A medieval ring could be deeply personal without being visually extravagant. Some rings carried words. The inscription might be religious, affectionate, or connected to loyalty. A few words hidden inside a band could transform a piece of metal into something intimate. The person wearing it might know that the message was there even when no one else could see it. In that sense, the emotional value of the ring came not from market price, but from private meaning. Colored gemstones also appeared in betrothal jewelry. Sapphires and rubies, among others, could carry symbolic associations. Sapphires were linked in various traditions with qualities such as loyalty, truth, or heavenly virtue. Rubies evoked color, blood, vitality, or passion. The exact meanings shifted across cultures and centuries, but the larger point is clear. There was no single universal stone that every serious couple was expected to choose. A marriage could be represented by metal alone. A colored stone could be important. An inscription could matter more than the gem. A carved image of joined hands might be the entire message. This diversity is important because modern people often imagine the diamond ring as the natural endpoint of romance, almost as if humanity had always been waiting to discover the correct stone. History tells a different story. For most of the past, diamonds were rare, difficult to obtain, difficult to cut, and far beyond the reach of ordinary people. Even when diamonds were known and admired, they did not automatically dominate the symbolism of marriage. Then we reach one of the most famous dates in the history of engagement jewelry, 1477. In that year, Archduke Maximilian of Austria became betrothed to Mary of Burgundy. Mary was not simply a young noblewoman choosing a husband in a private romantic story. She was one of the most valuable heiresses in Europe. Her territories, wealth, and political position made her marriage a matter of enormous dynastic importance. The union between Mary and Maximilian had consequences for the balance of European power. The engagement is frequently associated with one of the earliest well-documented uses of diamonds in a betrothal ring. That fact has turned the marriage into a landmark in jewelry history. Yet it is important to understand what it does not mean. It does not mean that people across Europe saw Mary receive diamonds and immediately decided that every future engagement must include the same stone. The ring belonged to the highest levels of aristocratic society. Diamonds remained extraordinary possessions. The story represents a beginning, not an instant revolution. The diamonds of the 15th century also did not look exactly like the brilliant stones displayed in modern jewelry stores. Diamond cutting was still developing. Early cutters worked with the natural form of the crystal and used relatively simple techniques compared with the mathematically precise facet patterns of later centuries. A medieval diamond could appear darker, less fiery, and less dramatically reflective than a modern brilliant cut stone. The setting, surrounding metalwork, and overall design did much of the visual work. Even so, diamonds carried qualities that made them ideal for symbolism among elites. They were exceptionally hard. Their durability could suggest permanence. Their rarity communicated wealth and power. A ruler or nobleman could give a diamond not merely because it was beautiful, but because very few people could obtain one. The stone announced status at the same time that it represented a bond. Maximilian and Mary's marriage, therefore, sits at an important intersection. The diamond was a romantic token, a political object, a status symbol, and a rare natural material all at once. That combination would become increasingly important centuries later. But for generations after 1477, many engagement and wedding rings continued using entirely different designs. The Renaissance produced some of the most imaginative marriage jewelry in European history. One fascinating example was the gimmel ring. A gimmel ring could be made from 2 or more interlocking bands. During a betrothal, separate parts might be associated with the two partners. At marriage, the pieces could be joined together. The design turned the entire ring into a mechanical metaphor. Separate lives become one structure. Some gimmel rings were elaborate, with hidden inscriptions, clasped hands, hearts, or other symbolic features. A ring might open to reveal words inside. It might appear complete only when multiple bands were fitted together. With hidden inscriptions, clasped hands, hearts, or other symbolic features, a ring might open to reveal words inside. It might appear complete only when multiple bands were fitted together. Here again, the emotional force came from design rather than from a single expensive stone. The object told a story. It invited the wearer to see the ring as a physical representation of union. Fede designs continued as well. Joined hands appeared again and again because the image was so effective. Over time, hands could be combined with hearts and crowns, helping to inspire later forms such as the Irish claddagh ring. Different traditions evolved in different places, but the underlying instinct remained the same. Jewelry could encode relationship status in recognizable symbols. By now, something important has happened. The ring has become a language. Metal says durability. Joined hands say agreement. A heart says affection. An inscription says personal devotion. Interlocking bands say union. A gemstone can add color, rarity, and status, but no single element has completely taken over. So how did the diamond eventually become so dominant? The answer requires leaving the world of symbolism for a moment and entering the world of geology, mining, trade, industry, and mass marketing. For centuries, Europe's access to diamonds depended on distant sources and long trade routes. India was historically one of the great sources of diamonds, known to the ancient and medieval world. Later, Brazil became an important source in the 18th century. Supply remained limited enough that diamonds continued to be strongly associated with elites. Then, in the late 19th century, major diamond discoveries in southern Africa transformed the market. Deposits discovered in and around what became famous mining areas created access to quantities far beyond what European consumers had known before. Mining operations expanded, companies consolidated control, diamonds became the center of a global commercial industry. This did not make diamonds cheap in the ordinary sense, but it changed the scale of supply. More stones could reach more buyers. At the same time, industrialization improved transportation, finance, advertising, metalworking, and jewelry manufacturing. A stone, once associated almost exclusively with aristocrats, could gradually enter the aspirations of a much broader middle class. Cutting technology also improved. This matters because the modern appeal of a diamond depends heavily on how it handles light. A rough diamond is not automatically the dazzling object people imagine. The brilliance comes from skillful cutting, polishing, proportion, and facet arrangement. Over centuries, cutters learned how to make diamonds return more light to the viewer. The stone became not only hard and rare, but spectacular. Jewelry settings evolved with that goal. In the late 19th century, designs such as the 6-prong Tiffany setting raised the diamond above the band, allowing more light to enter the stone and emphasizing its brilliance. The familiar solitaire engagement ring begins to emerge in a form that a modern shopper would recognize immediately. One central diamond, elevated, visible, and treated as the main event. Yet even then, the diamond had not fully conquered the engagement tradition. People still used colored gemstones, family rings, plain bands, and other designs. A diamond could be fashionable and prestigious without being mandatory. The final transformation would come not from a new mine or a better cutting wheel, but from a new story. By the early 20th century, the diamond industry faced a problem. A gemstone can be rare and beautiful, but consumers do not automatically decide that they need one for a particular life event. That connection has to be built. During the economic hardships of the Great Depression and the changing consumer environment that followed, the industry had strong reasons to strengthen demand. The solution was one of the most influential marketing campaigns ever created. De Beers and the advertising agency NWAR worked to connect diamonds with romance, permanence, and engagement. Instead of selling a mineral as a luxury product, the campaign sold an emotional expectation. Diamonds appeared in films, magazines, photographs, celebrity culture, and stories about glamorous marriages. The goal was not simply to persuade wealthy people that diamonds were attractive. It was to persuade ordinary consumers that a diamond engagement ring was the proper way to express serious commitment. The most famous phrase arrived in the late 1940s. "A diamond is forever." The slogan was extraordinarily powerful because it merged a physical property of the stone with an emotional ideal. Diamonds are extremely durable. Marriage is supposed to endure. The connection felt natural once it was repeated often enough. A geological fact became a romantic metaphor. This was the moment when the diamond's meaning changed on a massive scale. A diamond was no longer simply one prestigious choice among many. It increasingly became evidence of seriousness. If an engagement mattered, the ring should contain a diamond. If the love was permanent, the stone should be permanent. If a man was committed, he should demonstrate that commitment through the purchase. Advertising also shaped expectations about price. Campaigns encouraged consumers to think about how much a serious suitor ought to spend. Over time, popular rules emerged suggesting portions of monthly salary. These rules were not ancient customs passed down from medieval Europe. They were modern commercial ideas. That distinction is crucial because marketing is most powerful when it begins to feel like tradition. Within a few generations, many people came to experience the diamond engagement ring not as a product of 20th century advertising, but as something humanity had always done. That is a remarkable cultural achievement, a practice that had once been limited mainly to elites and particular historical examples, became widely interpreted as the standard language of love. This does not mean the feelings attached to the ring are fake. A tradition can have commercial roots and still become emotionally real. People give meaning to objects. A ring purchased today may represent genuine sacrifice, affection, memory, family continuity, or personal commitment. The important historical point is that the symbol's dominance is newer than many assume. Once diamonds became widely established, the industry continued evolving. New cuts appeared, jewelry styles changed. White gold and platinum became popular for certain designs. Celebrity engagements helped create trends around larger center stones. Lab-grown diamonds eventually introduced a new chapter, challenging old assumptions about rarity, origin, price, and what makes a stone meaningful. At the same time, many couples began returning to alternatives that would have looked completely normal in earlier periods. Sapphires, rubies, emeralds, plain bands, antique rings, family heirlooms, and custom designs. In a strange way, modern engagement culture is becoming diverse again after a century in which the diamond was treated as almost unavoidable. Some couples choose rings together. Some skip engagement jewelry. Some exchange watches, bracelets, or other personal objects. Others use tattoos. Some prefer inexpensive bands and spend money on travel or a home. The old question remains, but the answer is changing once more. What object, ritual, or gesture best represents this particular promise? Looking across thousands of years, one pattern becomes clear. Human beings have never needed a diamond in order to understand commitment. What they have needed is some way to make commitment visible. Ancient communities used witnesses and public agreements. Roman couples could use iron or gold rings. Medieval people used engraved bands, religious symbols, clasped hands, and colored stones. Renaissance jewelers created rings that opened, joined, and carried secret messages. Aristocrats introduced diamonds into engagement jewelry. Industrial mining increased supply. Modern cutting made the stones brilliant. Advertising transformed them into a cultural expectation. The object changed because society changed. Marriage moved between family strategy, legal institution, religious sacrament, economic partnership, political alliance, and romantic ideal. Jewelry changed with it. A ring that once emphasized contract could later emphasize affection. A stone that once displayed royal wealth could later become a middle-class symbol of devotion. A commercial slogan could become part of personal memory. That is why the history of the engagement ring is much more interesting than a simple story about jewelry. It is a history of how people communicate value. Imagine two people making a promise in a world without photography, without digital records, without instant communication, and perhaps without widespread literacy. A ring becomes powerful because it is always present. It can survive arguments, travel, illness, distance, and time. It can be shown to strangers. It can be passed to children. It can remain after death. Diamonds eventually became especially effective because they combined almost every quality a symbolic object could want. They were small enough to wear, durable enough to last generations, rare enough to feel valuable, brilliant enough to attract attention, and expensive enough to signal sacrifice. Marketing did not invent those qualities. What marketing did was combine them into one simple emotional story and repeat that story until millions of people recognized it instantly. But before that story existed, people had other ways of saying the same thing. A plain ring could carry more meaning than a gemstone. Two clasped hands carved in metal could tell an entire story without words. An inscription hidden inside a band could be known only to the wearer. A public vow could matter more than any object. A family agreement could bind two households. A shared ceremony could transform social status in front of witnesses. This is perhaps the most surprising lesson. Modern culture often treats expensive materials as if they create meaning. History suggests the opposite. Meaning usually comes first. The material becomes valuable because people decide what it represents. Consider the Roman iron ring again. Today, it might look cheap beside a diamond solitaire. Yet, to the person who wore it, the ring could represent a real change in life. It could announce a future marriage, a household arrangement, a legal relationship, a commitment recognized by family and society. Its monetary value was secondary to its social meaning. Consider the Renaissance gimmel ring. Two pieces fit together. There may be no enormous central stone, yet the design contains a powerful metaphor that modern jewelry still struggles to equal. Two separate structures become one. The wearer does not need an advertising slogan to understand the message. The object itself performs the idea. Then consider the famous diamond ring connected with Mary of Burgundy. It belonged to a world of dynastic politics, noble status, and extraordinary wealth. The diamond helped express rarity and importance. Centuries later, advertisers would take that aristocratic aura and translate it for mass consumers. What had once said, "I possess something almost no one can obtain," gradually became, "This is what a serious engagement should look like." That transformation tells us something about the power of culture. Traditions do not always begin in the distant past. Some are built surprisingly recently. Once they become emotionally familiar, however, they can feel ancient. Today, when a person opens a ring box and sees a diamond, thousands of years of history sit behind. The moment, even if no one in the room is thinking about it, behind the polished stone are ancient craftsmen shaping metal by fire. There are Roman iron bands and images of joined hands. There are medieval inscriptions and colored gemstones. There are Renaissance rings engineered to interlock. There are European royal marriages. There are Brazilian and South African mines. There are cutting workshops learning how to release more light from a crystal. There are 19th century jewelers raising stones above bands. There are 20th century advertising executives searching for a sentence that could reshape an industry. All of those histories converge in one tiny object. And yet the object is still only a symbol. A diamond cannot guarantee loyalty. Gold cannot create affection. A ring cannot force two people to remain together. The physical object survives because humans want promises to have visible forms. We want to touch something that represents what cannot be touched. That desire is far older than the modern engagement industry. It existed when people exchanged gifts before written marriage certificates. It existed when families gathered as witnesses. It existed when a simple metal band carried more social meaning than material value. It existed when two carved hands represented trust. So if we ask what people did before diamond rings existed, the answer is not that they had nothing. They had many things. They had ceremonies, witnesses, property agreements, gifts, iron rings, gold bands, inscriptions, clasped hands, colored gemstones, interlocking rings, religious blessings, family approval, and public vows. Different cultures chose different symbols because no single object owns the idea of commitment. The diamond came later. It entered elite betrothal history as a rare and powerful stone, expanded with mining and industrialization, became more visually spectacular through improved cutting, and then rose to extraordinary cultural dominance through modern marketing. By the 20th century, it had become so strongly linked with engagement that many people forgot there had ever been another language. But there had been many languages. And that may be the best way to understand the history of love and jewelry. Humanity did not spend thousands of years waiting for the diamond ring to be invented. Humanity spent thousands of years inventing ways to express promises. The diamond was simply one of the most successful answers. The next time you see an engagement ring, look past the stone for a moment. Imagine the long chain of objects that came before it. A rough iron band, a gold hoop, two tiny hands clasped together, a short sentence engraved where only the wearer can read it, two interlocking rings becoming one, a dark medieval diamond cut with tools that could not yet produce modern brilliance, a royal bride whose marriage would alter European politics, a miner pulling stones from the earth, a jeweler learning how to make light enter and return from a crystal, an advertising writer searching for 4 words that would convince generations that permanence could be worn on a finger. The modern diamond ring is the result of all of them. Yet before diamonds, the promise was already there. It was spoken before families. It was witnessed by communities. It was carried in metal. It was hidden in inscriptions. It was represented by joined hands. It was reinforced by law, religion, property, affection, duty, and memory. A diamond may be brilliant, but brilliance is not what created marriage. For thousands of years, people proved love and commitment without one. And perhaps that is the most enduring part of the story. Long before anyone believed that a proposal needed a sparkling stone, human beings were already searching for ways to transform an invisible promise into something lasting. They used whatever their world gave them: words, witnesses, rituals, gifts, iron, gold, colored stones, and rings shaped by hand. The materials changed, the customs changed, the meaning changed, but the desire remained the same: to say, in a form that could survive the moment, that two lives had chosen to become connected,